Now, more specifically for this podcast, we are going to speak about an issue which has been a factor of public interest litigation, which is an aspect of culture, the question of polygamy and the law.
The Islamic feminists argue that maybe there is no problem with polygamy as long as it's done within those ethical considerations.
And that's my question. You're opposing your own faith.
So I'm getting there. So of course we have the faith, we have the culture. Like I've given you a brief background of how they all come about. And then I explained to you that times have changed, that the reasons why some of this now, if you're culture-wise, the reasons as to why people practiced polygamy cannot be said to be the same reasons as to why they're doing it now. Right now, men are marrying more than one wife for very ridiculous reasons. One will say, I want to have a light-skinned woman, then I also want to have a dark-skinned woman. I want a woman who is well-endowed, you know what I'm saying. So there are different reasons, and to me, I would like to say that these reasons are quite selfish.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
Hello, my name is Joseph, and I'm the host of the Policy Digest. Here on this podcast, now for the nth time, we host African leaders that are shaping the futures of their communities. One way through which people shape the future of their communities is fighting for principles, for values, defending certain ideals aggressively in very many ways. One can be on the front line, or you could take the battle to the court. Now, more specifically for this podcast, we are going to speak about an issue which has been a factor of public interest litigation, which is an aspect of culture, the question of polygamy and the law. As you could have noted in the media, and as you can see on the screen, the Women's Pro Bono Initiative did file a petition in court. And this specific petition was dealing with how the Ugandan culture framework, specifically how the law is dealing with polygamy, legalizing it and ensuring that certain aspects of people within the community are not being favored by these very notions. So today we want to have quite a deep conversation. I know you have very many questions in your mind. Is polygamy allowed by the law? Is it not? Okay, why did they challenge that very notion? They'll be telling us. So in order to do that, we have been joined by a programs officer of the Women's Pro Bono Initiative, and that's Shadia Namanda. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Joseph.
I want to start by asking, what kind of work does Women's Pro Bono Initiative do? And then we forward into the other part of the conversation.
Once again, Joseph, thank you. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm glad that you are contributing to the advocacy through, of course, research. Yes, so the Women's Pro Bono Initiative is a non-profit organization that advocates for women's rights, women and girls' rights, and this we do through advocacy, we do through research, and also litigating in court. Yes.
Oh, that's good. So I understand part of the work of litigation involved you filing a petition in court. I just wanted to know what was your trigger? What triggered you to say, okay, let's file a petition in court challenging polygamy as an issue of the law at that point in time? You could take us through the specifics if you don't mind.
Okay. So I would like to begin with what we see as a fact that polygamy is a creature of the patriarchy. I don't know if you agree. But for us, polygamy...
I don't think that's debatable.
Yes.
That's not debatable, is it?
So for us, polygamy is a creature of the patriarchy. And because of that, it has many consequences. It could be positive, it could be negative, depending on the side of the coin that you are. So from our experiences as women's rights lawyers, we've been able to be exposed to some of the injustices that women in polygamous marriages are facing. So these range from social injustices to the psychological and emotional ones. Women in polygamous marriages, as we shall later discuss, they face quite a number of things. For example, it could, in one of the grounds that we raised in our petition, there is the violation of their rights to the protection of the law and violating their right and freedom from unequal treatment and being treated with dignity. So, and considering that the fact that polygamy is...
what do you mean by they are denied that right? Just for the layman.
Okay. So let me just take you through the case maybe before I talk to you about what triggered us. So...
Yeah, the egg and the chick, fine. Let's head
Yes.
there, sure.
Yes. So this is a case we filed in 2023, petitioning the Constitutional Court to outlaw the practice of polygamy, holding that it is unconstitutional. And our argument was that the practice contravenes the Constitution. Specifically, we have the right to equality and freedom from discrimination. It also violates the right to equal ownership of property, and it violates equal ownership of property, and it also oppresses the equal distribution of property during the marriage and after the marriage. But it also violates their right to health. And in this, we are looking at, the right to health in itself is not expressly stated in the Constitution, but it's something that can be argued under the right to life. But also, when you look at the other rights that are captured by Article 45 of the Constitution, those are rights that are provided for by the international conventions. So that's where the right to health comes in. And in here, we are not looking at just the physical health. We are looking at a person's mental health too. And in polygamous marriages, we have people, women in particular. My interests are for the women.
I see.
Yes. So there are women that we have situations where women compete for a man's attention. Because polygamy, I'll get into that discussion now, the actual definition of polygamy.
No,
but,
please.
Yes,
you
but when
delve into it when you when you
Yes.
get it. Yes.
Yes, but when you look at the definition of polygamy, it's gender neutral. So here we would be looking at polygyny, which is the act of a man having more than one woman. So in such scenarios, we found that women compete for the attention of the man, and in that way, of course, now they are subjected to emotional and psychological torture. And of course, this breeds jealousy, which leads to violence. I think now you get that connection of
I get the
polygamy
connection,
and gender-based violence. So because of those, but also, before I go to that, when there is also the aspect of the distribution of property, where we have a man with 4 families, 5 families. If it's a Hajj, it's going to be 4 families max. If it's a customary man, it could be 20. I mean, there is no one to stop him. So we have this man here who's fighting so hard in case they actually do care to try and provide for all these 20 families. So you realize that there is financial constraints and or financial restrictions to some of the families, depending on the person's financial situation. Yes. So because of such scenarios, but also not forgetting the impact it has on the children, that they are getting divided attention from the main person who's the father, because the mother is there 24/7, but now the father, who has to divide the attention.
the little resources they have across their 20.
Yeah. Yes. So because of all those issues, the Women's Pro Bono Initiative decided to do what? To petition the court. And in our case, we say that, look, this is a practice that is protected by the Constitution. We have the Customary Marriages Act that provides for the polygamous marriages. But then we also have the Mohammedan Act, which provides for the marriages by the
under the Islamic law.
The Islamic law, and they are all polygamous marriages.
Sure.
So we argued, because of the reasons that I've aforementioned, we argued that this practice should be outlawed because of the effects it has.
Let's run a thought experiment.
Yes.
Assuming the Constitutional Court had sort of accepted the petition, what would that counterfactual world look like now? Would it mean if you engage in polygamy, would that be criminalized? What would it look like?
So
in a world in which you succeeded?
Yeah.
Or will succeed in case you do.
Yeah.
Sure.
In case we do. So the law does not act retrospectively. That's one thing that I understand. So I would think that in case we succeeded with our petition and polygamy is outlawed, I don't think it would have an effect on the pre-existing legal marriages.
I love your frame.
The legal ones, not the people that are maybe cohabiting. Yeah. So I think it would, the ones who are in the pre-existing legal marriages would be protected. But after it being passed, no one else would be able to do it, to engage in such marriages. But also I would like to believe that if the court went ahead and upheld the principles of equality, they would, using the corrective approach, they would have come up with a solution in case we were successful. So in the corrective approach, we are looking at the problem, but also we are looking at a solution. That, okay, now if the polygamous marriages have been outlawed, how would they protect the people who are already in those marriages? So ideally, the court would have to pass regulations to protect the people that are already there.
Already in such institutions.
In such institutions. And that would be owed to Article 33 that provides for the protection of the dignity of the person, of the woman.
Let me ask, you said that that polygamy is a very neutral language.
Yes.
Which means that stretches to polyandry.
Yeah.
And you call it what?
Polygyny.
Polygyny
Yes.
is what the male-dominated one, which is the predominant one at the moment. The most of the narrative was of course in the sense that, okay, this is culture, and that's what the law argued,
Yes.
like freedom to exercise their culture. Do you find any sense in what the court argued, that people should have their freedom to marry as they so deem choose? That's for male and female. Yeah.
Okay, so do you know Chimamanda Ngozi? She's one of the
She's a favorite
feminists.
speaker.
Yes.
I've watched every TEDx
Yes.
she's done. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a TEDx I watched of hers where she speaks about culture in regards to gender. And she quotes that people make culture. Culture doesn't make people. So I'll take you back. Let me just give you a brief background of how we have the polygamy as an institution. So I happened to make a little research on polygamy in the African context. And lucky for me, I'm a Muslim, so I can relate with the polygamy in the Islamic context.
I really wanted to ask, yes.
Yes. So in the African
context... Are you going to be excommunicated from your...
I don't think
from
so.
your Muslim community? You are opposing...
If God could come on the earth, he would do that.
He would do that?
Yes, but luckily for me, he's up there.
Okay.
So historically, men married more than one woman.
All right.
Because of different reasons. And in the African culture, one of the reasons was for status. You know, the more women a man had, the higher the status that they could afford in the community.
Less.
Or even the less, yes. But that aside, they also had bigger families for economic purposes. Maybe they had their farms and more women, more women, more children. You have labor at a cheaper cost, of course. And the other reason was we used to have practices of widow inheritance historically.
Yeah.
And so when, let's say, a man's brother died, he could inherit his family plus the wife. So you see how polygamy is coming in. And when we were starting, I remember telling you that polygamy is a creature of the patriarchy.
Because where they perceive women as property.
Exactly. Yeah. So they could do whatever they wanted with them, and they were perceived as the dominant sex. So since the women were not the dominant sex, they could not do this. So of course it was the men that married the 1,000 women as they wanted. And this is something that was carried on with generations, even when times have changed. Because if we are talking about status right now, how would you show that you're rich?
But by, I don't know.
It could be a gadget.
Yeah, a gadget.
Could be that car. Very big car. Personally, I like a Ford Ranger. So,
You love a Ford Ranger?
Yes. Okay. So, it could be that. It could be the very big mall that you have.
Even, okay, I don't want to get there. Yes.
Yes.
But...
So, now that's in the African perspective.
Right.
So, when it comes to the Islamic perspective, we had in the Quran, the men are permitted to marry not more than 4. But this is something that is optional. And these verses permitting the men to marry more than one woman came about after, there used to be wars, and the men were permitted to marry widows so that they have someone to take care of them. But then it was also done, mainly it was for ethical purposes or ethical considerations. But it was also done where a woman could not have children, but maybe they needed companionship. So a man, maybe who is already pre-existing marriage, would marry this person. So you realize that it was all ethical. And then the other thing that our Muslim men like to quote is the sexual satisfaction. So it's not just about them satisfying their sexual needs. It was made to protect or to prevent them from engaging in adultery. Unfortunately, people still do it. But
so, wait, after you have your 4 women, you still do adultery?
Yes, they still do.
That's strange. But
yeah.
Yes.
So the Islamic feminists argue that maybe there is no problem with polygamy as long as it's done within those ethical considerations.
And that's my question. You're opposing your own faith.
So I'm getting there. So of course we have the faith, we have the culture. Like I've given you a brief background of how they all come about. And then I explained to you that times have changed, that the reasons why some of this now, if you're culture-wise, the reasons as to why people practiced polygamy cannot be said to be the same reasons as to why they're doing it now. Right now, men are marrying more than one wife for very ridiculous reasons. One will say, I want to have a light-skinned woman. Then I also want to have a dark-skinned woman. I want a woman who is well-endowed. You know what I'm saying? So there are different reasons. And to me, I would like to say that these reasons are quite selfish.
Those reasons didn't exist in the past.
No, they didn't. In the past was labor, status, ethical.
So men in the past didn't use to engage in polygamy for those very reasons.
I would like to say no. They did not. Right now they're doing it for selfish reasons. Well, yes, even in the past it could have come off as selfish because, why are you subjecting to these women to all this hard labor? You're marrying them because you need people to plow your farm.
Right.
So it could pass off as selfish, but that was then. And women did not have people to fight for their rights. Yeah.
I got you.
So when it comes to that, yes, now this is a culture. This is something. These practices are protected by the law.
Culture and by the law.
In the constitution, they would fall under our freedom of expression, that you can choose to practice your religion, practice your culture. But then again, we've had, before I get to that, the constitution protects culture and religion and not the practices. And because of that, we've seen our courts outlaw certain practices that have been deemed harmful. I'll give you an example, the female genital mutilation. Much as some people would agree to it, they say this is our culture, this is something we have to do, and we are fine with it, you do not have to intervene. But then this is a practice.
The law can come in as the bridge between extremes.
Exactly, because as government, they're supposed, or our government, it's mandated upon them to outlaw any practices that are harmful to people's health or practices that contravene with our constitution.
Just to, so government has like two approaches, right?
Yes.
At that level. So one, let's say in the case of female genital mutilation, a harm is articulated to be significant enough for government to intervene.
Yes.
In this specific case, your case in court articulates harms, the state doesn't buy them. What is not happening? Is it that the harm has not been articulated at the level at which people can appreciate it as weighty to act in the way you want them to act? Where do you think the problem is?
So, ridiculously and absurdly, if you've read the case, the judges take note of the evidence we submitted, which was mostly documentary evidence to show the harms of the polygamous marriages. Because in it, yes, we had the international precedents, but we also had reports coming from Uganda itself. I mean, one would argue that we are being influenced by the Western culture. But then we had there is a report that was submitted in, I forget the year, but it was Uganda's report to the Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women.
Women, yes.
Yes, and they highlighted that polygamy is one of the leading causes for domestic violence and gender-based violence. So these are not things we come up with. But then also, when you look at the normative trajectory in the international framework or at the international scene, many conventions still referring to the CEDAW, they've found that polygamy is harmful to women's rights. And of course, they specify to women's rights because, like I said, it's in the interests of the men. So women's rights, they look at the emotional and the financial security. They do not have emotional and financial security. Once again, the Maputo Protocol encourages for monogamous marriages to be the preferred marriages. It does not prohibit, rather it encourages, because it takes into consideration that there are state parties that have actually legalized polygamous marriages. So, but then again, it encourages it as the preferred type of marriages. The same was done by the United Nations Human Rights Committee. So, this is something that is being recognized internationally. And in the court itself, the court took cognizance of the evidence that was submitted, but rather they stated that all the social ills that are happening right now cannot all be attributed to the existence of polygamy.
Do you believe their argument?
I do not.
Why? Why don't you believe?
Takes me back to the issue of the consent. Again, the court ruled that we have a variety of marriages and that people can choose. So
I'm coming to that idea of choice.
Yes.
I'm coming to it.
So it's what I'm going to say is a bit intertwined with this.
No worries, please.
Yeah. So the court, in finding that, they notice that not all social ills that are happening right now are attributed to polygamy. For example, we cited the high prevalence of HIV. And in one of the reports still by our own country, it was mentioned, I forget the title, but it was mentioned that the prevalence of HIV is high in concurrent relationships. You understand?
What do you mean by concurrent relationships? Where one has multiple partners.
Yes. So you may argue that if you're legally married, maybe you'll be protected, but what's the guarantee that your wife is faithful to you? You understand? So it's easier for the spread of HIV to be done where there is more than one partner in play. So we cited all that, and the court took notice of it. But then at the end of it all, they stated that the people who get into these marriages know what they are going for, which is not right.
The court says that they consent.
They consent.
With the knowledge of...
with the knowledge of whatever is happening in the polygamous marriages and
the wrongs that
are being suffered, which is, I'm not saying it's not true, I'm saying it's not right.
What do you mean by it's not right?
It's not right. So simply because a person can get to choose. You know, we've had other people argue that if someone goes for that kind of setting and they're okay with it, they shouldn't be left. Again, I'll take you back to the example of the FGM. That there are people
if someone willingly consents to undergo FGM, that would not be right.
Yes, because of the social harms the harms that are attributed to it, which are mainly health reasons, but also we look at the violation of the dignity of women.
I get you. Do you contend that that we can have different weights of harms that come from different problems?
Well, I would like to say a harm is harm.
For example, if an asteroid came and knocked your head off, and maybe a fry came and beat your head, those are two different impacts, and the way you would deal with the impact of an asteroid is different from the way you deal with a fry, right?
But I would say that they're both harms.
They're both harms, right?
They're both harms.
But you treat them differently.
That's what the court implies, and we are saying that these harms are not different because they are affecting the equality and the equality of women. So, I mean, it's upon our courts to uphold gender equality. But how is it going to be upheld if they fail to outlaw such practices? And clearly, they admitted to polygamy having certain wrongs. But then again, that's something they tended to ignore, you see? And they go for that, they play that consent card, that this is something that people accept too. And yet it's upon the court, it's upon the court to outlaw practices that are harmful to women, practices that are going to take us back to the archaic days. We're supposed to be moving forward, not backwards. Practices that are going to protect the dignity. They're supposed to uphold practices that are going to uphold the dignity of women.
For example, they should ban everything which affects the dignity of women in any way.
If there is evidence of it, then they should.
Okay. Yeah, sure, that's the debate we should have. But we could get there. As we close, just to close there, would you say alcohol affects women?
In what ways?
Is alcohol harmful to women in any way? Does it affect the dignity of women?
It would depend on the
let's say prostitution.
On the intake, prostitution, and now that's the other argument. But I think I see where your question is going.
No, it's, where the debate is going. Would there's a harm?
So
does the harm call for outlawing? Does it call for regulation? Why shouldn't it call for regulation or other social cultural interventions of dealing with the aspect rather than establishing it by law?
If there is a harm that is promoting gender inequalities between men and women, the court should find ways. If it needs outlawing that practice, the court should. If it needs establishing regulations, the court should. Article 21 of the Constitution provides for the equality of men and women. The same Constitution further goes ahead in Article 33 to state that the rights of women, or that women's dignity must be protected with that of the what? With that of the men. You understand? So any practice that is going to contravene those, and that's why we actually went to court, because we are seeing that this practice has consequences that are actually harmful to women, and the practice is fueling gender inequality, which in turn is violating
the women's rights.
The women's rights and their equality in Article 21. So to answer your question, if the alcohol in this case
yes, was leading to a violation of women's rights,
yes,
the court should come and say...
not just women's rights, it's leading to gender inequality. When we are looking at gender equality and gender justice, we are looking at equal opportunities for the men and the women. And of course, now you delve into the discussion on the formal equality and the substantive equality, which is a different discussion. And by the look of it, our courts went for the formal equality. But yes, so as long as where did we come from? I think I've lost it.
No, my argument was is the question of polygamy at the same level of gravity as the same question of, say, FGM, things that have been outlawed by the law. Is the law a proportionate response to such a cultural issue, or do we deal with it using other methods? Just like you create like a counter movement that isn't necessarily grounded on the law. Is the law the most proximate response to that matter, as a court argued?
Yes.
That was my contention.
Okay, so and I think I've partly answered to that, stating that as long as the practices are leading to the violation of women's rights, then the law has to deal with it. If the law was not protecting these practices, then maybe we could go for the other measures that the ones that you're having in mind. But the problem that we have here is that the law, we have the Customary Marriages Act, which provides for the polygamous marriages. We have the Mohammedan Act, which provides for the polygamous marriages. And once again, when you look at the Article 29, it provides for the freedom of expression, that people can choose whatever way they would like to express themselves.
Yeah, in sexual relationships, even if it were to belong to a polygamous marriage.
Yes. This is a practice that is being protected by the law. So if we want the Constitution to uphold women's rights, then these laws must be outlawed, because now the law is the problem. And that's why the offense of bigamy cannot apply to people in polygamous marriages, because they are being protected by the law. And yet, if I'm to take you back to the offense of bigamy, the act previously, I think in the pre-colonial era or even before, the act of having more than one man from the colonialists, more than one wife, was something that was actually shunned. It was until 1603, that's in the 15th century, right? That's when they created the offense of bigamy. And the idea was to protect the integrity of marriage and also protect children from the impacts that come with
having multiple relationships.
Exactly.
Okay, Shadia, we're going to just hold it there. In the second segment of the podcast,
yes,
I want to touch on the concept of choice, on whether there's a contradiction in wanting to limit the choice of individuals, and what that means in a scenario where the choice of an individual is harmful. How does the state come in? Do they outlaw it? Do they regulate it? Stay tuned.
Let's talk about human rights. Human rights are the basic freedoms and protections that belong to every person simply because they are human. These include the right to speak your mind, to meet peacefully with others, to participate in decisions that affect your life, and to live with dignity and fairness. They are not special privileges, they are legal guarantees found in Uganda's 1995 Constitution and international treaties. Human rights matter in everyday life, from being heard in your community to accessing public services to feeling safe online or offline. The Civic Space Initiative is here to help people understand, protect, and use these rights. Through education, training, and dialogue, we are building a stronger, more informed society where people can stand up, speak out, and shape their future. Because when you know your rights, you can claim them. Learn more at www.sepa.or.ug or www.asf.be.
Do some people consent to join polygamous marriages?
Yes.
Which means if we upheld your ruling, if say the court allowed it, you would be preventing some people from exercising their choice.
Yes, we would, if because there is need for it to
That
be.
would be an
to
act
be
of
done.
aggression against people's choices.
I wouldn't say, because this is a non-derogable right, something that can be limited. I mean, aside from this, we've had political experiences where people's freedoms of speech and expressions are restricted because they are non-derogable rights which can be limited in public interest. So, in this case, of course, we've had many feminists argue that as feminists, we cannot go ahead with such a case, and some of them were actually glad that we lost that case.
Where were they coming from?
Because part of the feminist movements, of course, we look at the consent, that a woman should be able to consent to do whatever they want, something that we would call the autonomy, individual autonomy.
Yeah, sure.
They should be able to
consent to join
or
any type of relationship.
Yes, they must
maximizes their interests.
Yes. So and of course their arguments would be valid, but I'm going to take you back to the female genital mutilation case. Yes, I'm going to take you back because, of course, now this issue of consent was articulated in that case.
Yeah.
And in that case, I think it was Justice Twinom Jr. at that time who stated that they found that just because we have the freedoms of expression and freedoms of expression, these cannot override or cannot be upheld where their rights that are being violated, where people's dignity and right to health are being violated. And just to
can someone consent to do a bad thing?
Yes.
In this case, if we are to say polygamy is a bad thing, can someone consent?
Because they have their interests. Someone would say that, I just want to get married. I do not care if that person has a wife or something. They consent to it. And again, there are those that consented to female genital mutilation. There are those that consented to the act of returning the issue of that used to consent to other acts that have been outlawed. For example, we also had cultural practices of early marriages, girls getting married before 18. That was the norm then, and there are people that would consent to it. Because
if you should just allow me, Shadia. So we seem to have different perspectives here.
Yes.
The example you used to illustrate why polygamy is grave is female genital mutilation. On my end, I argue that there can be counter examples where bad things have not been outlawed even when they were bad. Things like alcohol, like a counter narrative, which cause violence in marriages, right? Alcohol is one of the leading cause of gender-based violence, right? But they have not been outlawed. So it would need to be argued that polygamy has a certain gravity of harm that is at the extent of female genital mutilation. Like the weight of the harm it would, because it would be as weighty in terms of like comparative. What is the argument from WPI to sort of equate the gravity of the example they are using as analogy? FGM and polygamy, are they the same thing? Are they of the same harms and that kind of thing?
So the common thing between both of them is that women's right to health was being violated. FGM, we have this practice where people are actually being cut, whether, like I said, some would consent to it, others do not consent to it. Yeah. Same thing with polygamous marriages. There are some that do consent to them and they're okay with the whole arrangement. And then there are others that do not consent, or others, I would call it, it's like forced polygamy. You are forced to consent to the arrangement because of different reasons. It could be someone, let's say like wife number one, who is in the marriage, and the man decides he wants to marry another, but she does not want to leave her marriage for different reasons. And many of them have raised that I'm doing it for the children. They are not ready to see their children being raised by a stepmom.
A stepmother, yes.
And still in our society, we have families where if a woman decides to walk away, the man will tell them, you either leave the children behind or you go with them. And if you go with them, do not bother me with anything like support and maintenance. So she will weigh her options and she will be forced to stay in such an arrangement. That's what I would call the forced polygamy. So, but again, simply because some people consent to it does not do away with the fact that this practice has actually caused more harm than good. Let me read for you an excerpt in the FGM case. Justice Winam Juni states that any person is free to practice any culture, tradition, or religion as long as such practice does not constitute disrespect for human dignity of any person, or subject any person to any form of torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. And like I've stated, social experiences. Polygamy has pushed many people or has caused them psychological torture. People are going through, financial issues.
Children.
There is no equality.
I think you articulated them very well at the beginning.
Equality between the families themselves, but also they lack equal protection compared to their counterparts in the monogamous marriages. There are many, I would like to say that most families that have property rights issues or fights upon the death of a deceased are usually the polygamous marriages. Whether or not, or it could be situations where it's a man that had more than one spouse and more children.
And as
the
a result,
other family, they are always sidelined. Exactly. So you may say that the harms in FGM were more brutal, but also the harms in the polygamous marriages cannot be just ignored. Because, like I said, there is still our reports to the CEDAW committee show that gender-based violence is more common in polygamy. And you know what comes with gender-based violence? People have lost their lives.
Let me ask, so if we outlawed polygamy, first of all, I don't condone it. I'm just saying the premise of the argument. If we outlawed polygamy as a culture, as a practice, would men stop doing that? Would they stop the gender-based violence? Would we achieve the outcomes we are saying we would achieve if, say, we outlawed polygamy?
I think, they would not stop, but we are contributing to reducing the many causes of GBV. We are not saying that polygamous marriages are the only causes for GBV. There are many underlying issues. Okay,
specifically for GBV associated with polygamy, let's frame out the countless cases. Let's say that is categorized by polygamy. Would you think that if we outlawed it, then the polygamy would go away, the GBV would go away, the finances would automatically be fairly distributed across? So would the problem go away?
Specifically that is attributed to polygamy?
Yeah.
Yes, it would. Because now, if the polygamy is outlawed, we have monogamous marriages only. Now, whatever resources you get as a couple, I do not want to say as a man, Now this is a couple coming together to raise their children or try and survive. Whatever resources you get, you use effectively just for the two of you. Unlike situations where it's one man and 4 women,
and
they
25 children.
And 25 children where they have to divide, and you understand. And there is, of course, there are fights, there are inequalities, like this one, I cannot do this. This one, maybe you can
content
sit.
there. I would,
But yeah, it would reduce.
These are habits. Can a law take, okay, let me see. Let me take the Christian perspective.
Yes.
Can a law take a demon out of someone? Let's call it a demon or what? Let me leave it at a bad habit. Can a law take out a demon out of a person? Some people argue that these are like habits of passion. Something like with alcohol, it's very difficult to say a law stopping people from drinking alcohol.
The law can't, but the law has countermeasures. If the person is now refusing, if polygamy is outlawed and now we have strictly monogamous marriages, and they still have these habits of not providing for their children, now that's when we go to the family court for maintenance. You can always sue. You understand?
I'm following.
Now that would be the counteractive measure. And then again, if the polygamy is outlawed, but a certain gentleman is still having extramarital affairs, now that's an offense, the offense of bigamy that I talked about. You understand?
I'm following.
This is the protection that we want to be afforded to all women in marriages. Something
where any
extra
marital affairs are treated as a crime.
As a crime, and the offense of bigamy. I don't know if it answers your question.
I'm following. I'm following the line of argumentation.
Yes.
I am. So I know that problems have different approaches to solving them. And you also rightly say that outlawing is one of them. In this specific case, why is it that you narrowed down to outlawing as a solution to dealing with the polygamy question? Especially on something as complicated as habits of passion, in this case, crimes of passion.
So, considering its consequences, like I said, and it's a practice that is protected by the law, I don't think we could have achieved anything, or I don't think the court could have put in place any safeguards to protect the women in these marriages that could actually work. It's one thing for the court to give orders, Let's say the court, in the event that the court did establish some kind of safeguards. I've seen there are some Western countries that have actually put safeguards for women in polygamous marriages, and one of them is that the woman has to consent to it, but also they state that there has to be some kind of financial capability.
Someone has to prove it. I'm told in Islam, do men have to always prove it before they marry, or it is a desirable religious practice? That's
how it's supposed to be in the Islamic practices. You must have the financial capability to treat all the families equally.
You take your bank statements to the bank, and then the sheikh says you have the capacity. You don't. How do they do that?
If it's something you're doing and you're doing it in accordance with the religion, you would have to find it in your heart. But if you're doing it for selfish reasons, you would just do it regardless of your financial capabilities. So you're not going to go and take your bank statements to the sheikh. It's really your relationship with God and why you are doing it. You understand?
I get you. And Shadia, maybe if we could go to the other part of the conversation, which is on choice. Why are we? Why is it that on one point, and I know the WPI is feminist, people, you said polygamy is pretty much gender blind or gender neutral? Isn't there a contradiction in wanting to limit people's choice using the law?
So, I don't know. I'm making so much reference to the FGM case.
And I'm going to always drag it the counter narrative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, where they discuss the aspect of the choice and the freedoms around it. So, if a practice is harming or leading to a violation of certain rights of the subject matter, you cannot argue that this is our freedom, that we should do it. I don't know if you get it. So the rights or the people's protections must be upheld rather than just arguing that this is our choice, this is our freedom, this is something we can do and we are protected by the law. There is a research paper that I read.
Let's say like for the people, for example, who get into polygamy and they're having I don't say a good time, but they are not having the issues that you're citing. Those people would be affected by that infringement in their choice, right?
Yeah. The existence of that group of people does not negate the fact that the practice has harmful or negative consequences. And that's where the law comes in. That much as some people are actually... Yes,
Shadia, your argument is that the law is the answer to every question.
No,
like with alcohol or with
still
smoking.
the alcohol exam.
Would you defend still like a ban, outlawing the drinking of alcohol? It's bad because I don't drink alcohol. I don't encourage drinking of alcohol. But
yes.
would you encourage a law banning alcohol?
Well, now it's going back to the freedoms and choices, and ideally in our aspect, like I explained to you, if it's something that is contributing to gender inequalities, then it will. Now, the alcohol in this case is being taken, could be by the man or the woman.
Yeah.
This is more of a, I do not want to say personal trait, but again, it's something that people have chosen. Yeah?
Yes.
And I think, yes, I do not drink, but I think with alcohol intake, I think the effects or the consequences depend on the amount that the person has taken. So it's something that you can control. And I explained to you that even if certain groups of people do consent to it, yeah, some will go in there knowing what they are going for, yeah. And you're looking at, of course, the informed consent. That I'm going to enter this marriage. This man probably has a wife, they have children and everything, but I'm going to enter it. What reasons?
In the end, I'm going to knock that rain.
Willingly. Yes. What reasons do they have? Yeah. So the thing with the informed consent, you must be knowing the consequences or the results. There is a research paper that I read where 3 women were interviewed and they were for polygamy. And they said they're okay with the setting. And they do not find any problem with it. They have how things work out. If the man is sleeping over the other side, that's okay with them. But then we have the bigger group of people. Most of these practices are very common in the rural areas. So we have this bigger group of people that are maybe forced to be in it. So how is the law going to protect them? Takes me back to, much as the court would have provided safeguards for them, these are things that cannot be easily implemented. Still, if the court stated that a person should consent to this kind of marriage as a safeguard, or the second wife, yes, still there are other issues, underlying issues. For example, the financial condition of the woman. There are many, you see, we live in a society where the men, it's a patriarchy society, and we have the men. Most men have a stronger financial muscle compared to the women. So women in such situations find themselves unable to make decisions because of their financial position. So by all means, they'll be forced to consent, much as the law is stating that all the safeguards that we have established or the protection is that the people should consent. So going back to your question, that just because a certain group of people do consent to it does not negate the fact that this practice is actually harmful. And yes, before you ask another question.
I agree on the harm.
Yes.
I totally do.
So it does not...
My only issue is on approach, whether the law is an approach to dealing with such an issue. You argue that it's just like alcohol, the harms, let's say, of alcohol are controlled and mitigated, right, within the law without a law allowing the alcohol itself. Your argument, maybe as you close, and I want to just get your last thoughts on this, is that the harms which you seem to want to answer with the law can't be controlled and averted by any other mechanism other than the idea of outlawing the cultural prerogative of polygamy.
And my answer to that, first of all, is if this practice is protected by the law, by all means, we have to go with the first thing, which is outlawing it. So in a bid to deal with the other consequences that are associated or that are related to the same things that arise from the polygamous marriages, the domestic violence, the psychological torture, the violation of the dignity, we always have other forums. And again, I'll speak to the law, because the law establishes, for those if it's domestic violence, we have the Domestic Violence Act. So outlawing polygamy would be our contribution to the reduction of the causes of such consequences, of such actions like domestic violence or not providing for their children.
Yeah, so your first petition was not accepted, and I understand you're appealing. They didn't accept the first arguments. Are you making any different ones to probably convince another bench in another way?
Our arguments are the same. Yes. And you see, on appeal, you usually call out I do not want to say call out the court, but you're trying to argue that, look, we presented this evidence, but the court did not consider it. So in the first case, this was evidence that the court took note of, but they disregarded it. We also refer to different international conventions, but the court, of course, they simply conclude that these are not binding on them and that the opinions of most conventions are flawed. So now this is us going, when in our appeal, we hope that the Supreme Court will be able to uphold the Constitution. And by upholding the Constitution, it would have to do its duty to outlaw any practices that are in contravention with the Constitution or practices that violate the rights of women. So it's still the same case, no new arguments, because on appeal you can't introduce
from the best. Yes.
You just have to literally repeat what you stated, and we highlight the things that the courts at trial did not the first court did not take into consideration.
Thank you, Shadia. Thank you.
Welcome.
I hope to your audience you did love that chat about the intersection between polygamy and the law and the women's pro bono initiatives cause against that culture. See you. Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest podcast, the Center for Policy Analysis podcast that is profiling African ideas and people that are shaping the future of their communities. Subscribe to all our platforms on YouTube and Podbean.